it's Amanda from Loops and Love Crochet here, and today I have a video tutorial for working up the zeros and crosses stitch. So as you can see, the zeros and crosses stitch has a pretty texture, a little bit lacy here with kind of the holes in between, but also very sturdy and holds its shape as well too. You can use this crochet stitch pattern here for working up projects that are in back and forth rows like scarves or cowls or dishcloths or pot holders or anything like that. And then you can also work this stitch in the round, use for like a bag or a basket, or you can use make a nice throw blanket with it as well if you work it quite a bit larger too. So in this video tutorial, I'll show you how to work the zeros and crosses stitch, which is formed with rows of double crochet with chain 1 stitches in between, rows of the cross double crochet stitch, and then a single crochet row in between, and then you start with the zeros, and then you start with the crosses again. And then this pattern also looks great on both sides. It's a reversible crochet project as well, so you get the nice texture on each side of your project. For this tutorial today, I'm going to be using a 5mm crochet hook, and I'm using the Bernat Maker Home Deck yarn here, just because it's a little bit thicker of a yarn so you can see the stitches better on camera in the video as well. But you can make this stitch with any yarn and hook size as well, depending on the crochet project that you're making. I'll let you grab your yarn and your hook, and we'll get started. Okay, to start this zeros and crosses stitch tutorial here today, I've started with a starting chain of 28 stitches. Your starting chain will depend on how wide you'd like your project to be, plus some extra stitches at the end to make the stitch pattern work out here. So the requirement for the zeros and crosses stitch is your chain needs to be an even number, so a multiple of 2, plus you'll need 1 extra chain on the end, and I'll explain that to you in our next row there. And then you'll need 3 extra chains on the end for our foundation. Okay, so 3 plus 1 is 4, so you'll have to add an extra 4 chains to however wide you'd like your project to be. So since I would like my project to be 24 stitches wide for this little stitch sampler today, then I'm going to be working a starting chain of 28 stitches, 24 plus 4 for those extra stitches that are needed. So now to start off with here, my first row is going to be the 0 stitch. So for the 0 stitch, we're going to be working double crochet stitches in every other stitch there, with a chain 1 in between each double crochet and skipping a chain. So I'm going to start in the 6th chain from my hook. So I'm going to yarn over, and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm going to work a double crochet in that 6th chain from my hook. So now we can see here we have an extra chain here, and then we have these three chains here are becoming our first double crochet, and then this chain 1 up here in the middle is becoming a chain 1 stitch that will go in between all of our double crochets, which will help when we're working those cross stitches in the next row. So we have our first double crochet, we're going to chain 1, and then we're going to skip the next stitch, and then we'll double crochet in the next one. So there we go, chain 1, skip the next stitch, double crochet in the next one, chain 1, skip the next stitch, double crochet in the next one, chain 1, skip the next stitch, double crochet in the next one, chain 1, skip the next stitch, double crochet in the next one. So you're just going to repeat that all the way across, so you can see all of these zeros in between each of the rows here, each of the double crochet stitches, and those are our zeros, part of the zeros and crosses stitch. So we'll just complete the rest of the row just like that. Just a couple of stitches left here, and then we'll go on to the crosses stitch, which will be in the next row. So just a couple stitches, double crochet stitches with a chain in between left here. And the last one will go in your very last chain, which is the one right beside your slip knot from where you started your starting chain. So here's our last double crochet stitch here. So these are all of our 0 stitches. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a chain and turn and then start the crosses stitch, which is the next row. Okay, so now we're going to start the crosses stitch for our 0s and crosses here. So at the end of this row here, we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to turn our work. So now we're working on the back side here. So the wrong side is facing us, or the back side is facing us. And now we're going to work cross double crochet stitches in the chain spaces from the last row here. So the chain spaces are what created those 0s here, and we're going to work cross double crochet stitches in them. So what that's going to look like first is we're going to yarn over, and I'm going to skip this chain space for now, and I'm going to go into the second one here, and I'm going to work a double crochet into that chain space. I'll just insert my hook into the space, working just a double crochet like you normally would. Now for the next part here, we're going to work the rest of the crossed double crochet. We're going to be going back and working in this chain space that we just skipped, and we're going to be working a double crochet. Now the only thing that's a little bit different is we're going to be working that double crochet behind this double crochet stitch. So what that's going to look like is we're going to yarn over, and we're going to come around behind that double crochet that we just made, and we're going to go into that chain space from the front there, and then you're just going to pull up a loop, and you're going to complete the rest of your double crochet as you normally would. So there's our first crossed double crochet there. You can see one of the double crochet stitches, the first one, is laying over top of the second one. So then we're going to do that again in the next one here. So we'll skip this one here for now and go on to the next one. Yarn over, insert your hook into the chain space, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, right there. And then we're going to go back and we'll do a double crochet for that cross double crochet into the chain space here. And the stitch is going to be right next to the other double crochet going the other way. So yarn over, come behind that double crochet, and then insert your hook into that chain space, yarn over as usual, and complete the rest of your double crochet. So there we go, we have 2 cross double crochet stitches there. So we'll keep on going across here. So yarn over, skip this chain space, go on to the next one, complete your double crochet, and then we're going to go behind and complete the double crochet over here. There we go. So again, we'll skip that stitch, work a double crochet, and then we'll go back and double crochet in that chain space that we skipped. And that's just how we're going to work the whole way across here. So we'll continue with those crossed double crochet stitches all the way to the end, and then I'll show you what the end looks like of the row. It's a little different. Okay, so now we're just working, we see our last 0s part here, that our chain space that we're going to be working that last cross double crochet in, and then going back and working in the one we skipped. And now, so here are all of our cross double crochet stitches here, and now at the end of this row, we're just going to put another double crochet at the very end in the top of the 4th chain, and that's because when we started our project here, this chain 3 and chain 1 counted as our first double crochet. So we're going to work in the 4th chain, so 1, 2, 3, 4, that's the top one there, and we'll just be working our last double crochet, which will keep our ends nice and even, and our stitch count will work out properly there. So now we have our first section of zeros and crosses here, and now what we're going to do is we're going to work a row of single crochet, 1 single crochet in each stitch, and then we're going to go back to our zeros and crosses again. So what we do here is we do a chain 1 and turn, and then we're going to be coming across here, working 1 single crochet in each stitch across. So there we go, just 1 single crochet in the top of each of those double crochet stitches from the previous row here, and we're going to go all the way across. And then at the very end, I'll just show you what that looks like there, because we want to make sure our stitch count works out. And then our last single crochet stitch is going to go in the top of this chain here. And there we go. So now we have our zeros and crosses and our row of single crochet that goes in between. And now what we're going to do is we're going to chain 1 and turn. So we're going to chain 3 and turn, and then we're going to start our next row of the zeros. Okay, so now we're going to work that chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then turn. Now this chain 3 is going to count as our first double crochet, and if you remember back from this first row here, the double crochets all have a chain 1 in between. So what we're going to do is we're going to do an extra chain. So that was a chain 4. We're going to skip that first stitch there, and we're going to make a double crochet in the next. And that chain 1, extra chain 1 we just did is going to become our first chain 1 space there. So now we're going to chain 1 again, skip the next stitch, and then double crochet. Chain 1, skip the next stitch, double crochet in the next one. So we just continue that the whole way across with our double crochet stitches and a chain 1, skipping a stitch in between each of the double crochet stitches. Okay, and then the last one here. So there is our next zeros row. And now we're going to be chaining and turning and then starting the crosses again. Okay, I'm going to start with our chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn. And now we're going to start with our next row of the crosses stitch here. And this one has worked out exactly the same as the last row of the crosses stitch here, so it should be very familiar. We're going to skip this first chain 1 space, and we're going to double crochet in the next one. And then we're going to go back and double crochet in the chain space that we skipped. And remember, we're working behind that first double crochet, because we're doing the cross double crochet. We want one of them over top of the other one there. So again, we're going to skip this chain space. We're going to go to the next one, double crochet in that chain space, and then go back and work the other double crochet, making the cross double crochet, working behind the first double crochet. So we'll come in behind, There we go, and we're just going to repeat that the whole way across again. Now all of the rows of this zeros and crosses stitch are going to be worked up the same from here on out here. So all the zeros row are going to be the same, all of the crosses rows are going to be the same, as well as the single crochet rows in between. But remember, you can check out the written instructions for this stitch here on the blog as well. And we'll just finish up the rest of this row here. Okay, and there we go. And remember we finished the row of the crosses stitch with one last double crochet in the top of that chain there. And there we go. So we have zeros, crosses, a row of single crochet, zeros, crosses, and then we finish with a row of single crochet. So one single crochet in each stitch all the way across. And it gets nice and quick and smooth here. The more you work up the stitches here, the more comfortable you will get with them. The same goes for working those cross double crochet stitches, working behind the other one. That might take a few stitches to get the hang of. There we go, and our last single crochet goes in the top of the chain space there. And there we go, there are two sections of the zeros and crosses stitch. Now you can kind of play with this stitch as much as you want to, depending on how you want your project to look. Normally you would go into the zeros again next, and then the crosses again next, and then single crochet. But you can kind of play around with it with working, maybe you want to work more rows of single crochet between each of the sections here, or maybe you want to work a few rows of just zeros or a few rows of just crosses. You can choose kind of how you want it to work, or maybe you just want to do the zeros and crosses stitch for a little part of your project and then work the rest in single or double crochet. This is kind of a versatile stitch, so you can kind of make it your own, and depending on the project that you are working on. I hope you found this stitch tutorial helpful. I hope you liked learning how to make the zeros and crosses stitch with me today. And you can find more video tutorials and crochet patterns on my YouTube channel. And you can follow Loops and Love Crochet on Facebook and on Instagram. Thanks for watching.